Great minds, great minds. Yeah, you see, I hadn't actually considered streaming this at all, but then Dingus co-host over there is like, "Hey, everybody, we're streaming!" I'm like, wait, what?
I hadn't considered to stream this at first, but then common sense kicked in, and I went, duh!
Yeah, like, I hadn't thought to do
then
that.
common sense kicked in, and I went,
I'm gonna deflect the blame over to Sayara, because Sayara did a Soxcast art, and I'm just like, oh, so we're doing this.
That Soxcast art is great.
It is great.
My favorite part is that you're not on it.
Yeah, same. I'm probably under the desk.
Yeah, there you go. Huh.
Trust me, like, if it's streamable, it's worth streaming. The only reason why I don't already stream, like, the video games that I play so that people can experience them is because I don't know the first thing about setting up the tech, and I don't even know if I have the space in my apartment for the tech. But there are so many times that I was playing stuff like Etrian Odyssey, or even my replay through of Jade Cocoon 2, where I was like, God, I wish I could be doing my running commentary and having people to interact with while I did this.
Dude, you would be a natural. People would love you.
I know. There's a lot of things in life that I'm like, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I know that I would more than easily have running, interaction with people watching at the same time.
Dude, streaming's easy. I am an idiot and I do it.
It's also finding the time, because
that's a good point.
My career is doing very well.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I make time for my wife too. But if Joe Zija, he was in Fire Emblem Three Houses. If he can manage to do it several nights a week, I can probably manage to do it.
A number of the Somnium Files actors and actresses streamed that game as well. So yeah.
There you go. There you go.
You didn't.
I didn't.
You didn't.
I am an idiot.
You are, but you're our idiot. Well, I think I can.
I'll tell my wife I'm now in a polyamorous relationship.
Oh boy. I'm glad you're coming hard with the jokes tonight, because as I was telling After5 before we pulled you in, I woke up sick as a dog this morning, and I was like, oh no, this is terrible. So, thank you. For making the evening.
I don't know if you ever heard this story, but I was actually sick as a dog the very first time I recorded for East 8, Memories of Salsetta.
Oh, for real?
We had done a 1-day flyout for my stepbrother's wedding, and either on the flight there or being in a different atmosphere or on the flight back, I caught something, and I was super grungy, like super sick.
Oh no.
But they weren't able to reschedule, so they just had me come in and record for the role. Well, here's the thing. Hummel is, one of those guys who doesn't like to talk about his past much, and he keeps to himself,
Right.
But because of how sick my throat sounded, I had like this Steve Bloom raspiness.
Oh, nice.
But I didn't have to like drop my pitch down and like add the gravel. It just happened naturally. So I was able to make him sound, like 16, 17 years old, while also giving him that Steve Bloom raspiness that made him sound cool and edgy. It was the perfect voice. And it was literally the epitome of working with what you've got. And I totally threw my voice out in the process because you're not supposed to be performing when you're sick. Anyway, NAS America ends up revamping the script after getting feedback, and so they have me come back in to re-record my character. So,
Oh no!
So you know how they always warn you, like, don't audition when you're sick, because if you get cast and you come in and you can't do the voice again, you're gonna tick everybody else off?
Right?
So this was a case where I legit was so happy with how he sounded the first time, and it was like, there's no way I could get myself back there unless I, like, deliberately... imagine most people driving to sessions would warm up by doing, la 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 la, warm up their vocal cords.
Right.
I would be doing the opposite, where I'm just screaming bloody murder until I tear my vocal cords apart, so that when I come in, they're like, how you doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
That's right.
I explicitly trained for 30 minutes before coming into the session. I've never sounded better. Let's do it.
Puts a whole new spin on that character.
Joker, where did you take Harley? Where's Harley Quinn? I have to save her.
You never went full Marge Simpson, did you?
Oh, homie!
Literally.
No, we have to stop the bad guy, homie. If he destroys the world, Maggie will be sad.
My Marge is not as good as my Miss Piggy. My Miss Piggy is way better.
Oh. Could you hit on After 5 as Miss Piggy?
Oh God.
Well, I can think of many things we can do after 5.
They all take place
Miss
after
Piggy,
5.
I would appreciate it if we were married. We were. Shut the fuck up, Kermit!
Whoa! Good thing that wasn't a Nintendo voice.
Muppets now announced for Switch. Shit!
Oh, shit.
Oh God.
Sorry, is this a PG-13 stream?
Absolutely fucking not.
Okay, awesome.
And there it is.
No, you can say anything you want on this podcast.
You were like, well, it was, but hey, YouTube COPPA, right? So we gotta make sure it's not for kids.
So I deliberately marked all of my podcasts for kids using that back end thing. So I look forward to being banned from YouTube very soon. It was a very smart move on my behalf, I have to say. Hey,
At least we're
everybody!
getting the kids into moon pies.
There you go. Good thing I've still got that Moon Pie scholarship going. Hello, everybody. You've just stepped into the middle of Dog Doo, or as we like to call it, another hot, steaming episode of the Soxcast. I'm your good pal, Polly. I am the host, as always, and I'm joined today by, well, somebody who's not actually a regular host. I just brought him in because he is here to play the role of Squeeing Fangirl today.
I'm here to just be a parasitic host today. I'm just here to leech off of your followers and your views and then leave you and never call back.
All 5 of them. Ladies and gentlemen, After 5 is here.
Hey, that makes 6, which is After 5.
And if he was on an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, he would be Squidward. Squee. See the joke there?
Did you hear about the Squidward spin-offs that they're making?
They're making a Squidward spinoff?
Oh, really?
Yes. And it's my understanding that the showrunner creator for SpongeBob deliberately said he was not interested in having any spin-off shows made because that's not what the show was intended to be the catalyst for. But of course he's dead now, so what does Nickelodeon care?
Right. That's I had no idea that 1, there was going to be a Squidward spinoff, and that 2, like the original creator, was not interested at all. That's a bit of... What if they asked you to do a voice for that, though?
That's a good question.
Where are you at morally on that?
I'm obviously going to do my research first and see if that actually was the case. But I believe the creator for SpongeBob, he died from Lou Gehrig's disease, right?
Yeah,
he
did. Yeah, just I would say, what was that, 4 or 5 months ago or something?
Yeah,
that couldn't have been that long ago.
That's definitely something that hits a lot closer to home for me than for most people. So I'd look up, I'd see what his wishes were, and if it goes against that, I might out of solidarity. Listen to me. I'm going to get myself blacklisted from Nickelodeon.
Oh, no. Oh, no. And it's all because of my dumb podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very special guest with us, of course. As you've heard, he's been regaling us with these amazing stories concerning the voice acting industry. So obviously he's a voice actor, and as the script, the contract says, I have to say, greatest voice actor alive, way better than that chump D-Mac.
Sir.
Sir.
You forgot the sir.
Sir. Welcome, Sir Sean Chiplock, ladies and gentlemen.
Ah, yes. It is a pleasure to be here from the wonderful Kingdom of England. How are you tonight?
I'm very good. It's amazing that you were able to hide your English accent this whole time.
Oh, of course. Whenever I need to sound like an American, I just take my IQ, cut it in half, and double it. It's as easy as that.
Son of a bitch. I'm sorry. That wasn't supposed to happen.
I said, when I need to sound like one of you peasant Americans, I just take my IQ, cut it in half,
Right.
and then, and this is the important part,
Right.
I double it.
You double it. Right. I got
Double
you.
it.
But not before cutting it in half. You have to cut it in half before you double it. Some people
right.
say you can double it and then cut it in half. I do not recommend it. That's how you end up sounding Swedish.
Yeah. Nobody wants to sound like the Swedes.
No.
No, that would be bad. For those not in the know, though, me and Sean, hey, we got some history.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah, it turns out that we played some crappy game on Steam a few times together. I can't remember what it was. It was like Steam Night.
Spiral Nights.
Spiral Nights! Yeah, we played
That's
that.
still going, by the way.
And it's still going, and I hated it.
Spiral Knights was how I learned how to play in-game marketplaces, because one of my guild members was like this accountant who liked to play the auction house for fun. And he basically taught me how to figure out what items were in demand and were the easiest to farm craft, but required just enough effort that most people weren't going to do it. And by the time, this was back when it still cost like the premium currency to use each floor, in a span of like 3 months of just running a certain boss over and over and over again, I had at least 4 years worth of premium currency from just making and selling items on the auction house, not even using a single real world dollar. So I owe every ounce of free playtime I got in that game to him.
Wow. That's nuts. I knew that like you were always playing that game. I had no idea you were like literally the boss of that game by that
to
point.
boil it down to its most basic, to boil it down to the most basic mathematics, it was about, you spent about 500, 600 energy to run the thing enough times to be able to make the item.
Mm-hmm.
Then it cost about 3,000 to 4,000 energy to craft it, and then usually to roll for like one of the really good bonus effects. And then if you got a good bonus effect, you could sell it upwards of for 25,000. So even with a crappy one, you could usually sell it for between 8,000 to 15,000. So you usually made your money back. But it did not take long to have like 800,000 energy to spend when most floors cost you 10 per use.
And you are now blacklisted by the creator of Spiral Knights. That's 2 in 1 episode. You have been
You are
blacklisted.
now the moderator of Pyongyang.
Oh, gee. So you've also, like people might not know, you've actually written for SocksMakePeopleSexy.net.
Yes! I think I only wrote once, but it was for one of my favorite childhood games of all time, Mega Man Legends / Mega Man 64.
Yeah, that was during one of our 31 days, 31 updates things, I think. And I remember just getting like a random email from like, this Sonic Mega guy, whatever, wants to write for your dumb site. And I was like, well, fine. I need content for that day. Put it up.
So I have to say, in comparison to most of the articles written there, like how did mine compare in terms of how much extra formatting you had to do to put it on the site? Like, was it really clean and organized, or did you look at like a hot mess of basic HTML and go, oh?
Yours was, if I remember properly, one of the easier ones, because you had done some pre-formatting and it was just like, okay, this works. I can just throw this in the template. We are done. Some people over the years, though, I'm looking out at some of you who are probably listening to this right now, staring daggers into my microphone, praying to God each and every one of them severs your kidneys from your body thing. Right. That's, yeah. Hey, Sean!
What up?
Who the hell are you and what do you do?
Oh. Well, you can highlight the article with voice of this character in the future if you want.
I will absolutely do that.
So, I'm a professional voice actor. Some of the recent stuff I've been able to talk about. In fact, last night, I double premiered on Toonami as the voice of Guido Mista in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5 Golden Wind, and also as Demon in the Bog from Demon Slayer, which is a Union anime production.
Oh.
They're doing Union anime now. I'm so excited.
That's crazy. That's really awesome, and I am super glad to hear that.
But most people know me as either Revali, Teba, and the Great Deku Tree from The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Mm-hmm. Yeah, small game. It was release day for the Nintendo Switch, one of the top-selling games of all time, even managing to beat out Ocarina of Time. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
It's a very cute little indie.
Eventually.
It's a cute little indie game. It's a cute little indie game.
Yeah, it's a cute little indie. I love the retro graphics.
Yeah.
Also, Mishima Yuki, also known as the Slapping Boy from Persona 5,
yep.
who just exists to be friend-zoned by absolutely everybody.
Poor guy.
Fun fact, the closest I have come to someone recognizing what Revali is outside of a convention center, like just in general everyday life, the closest I have come to someone recognizing that character is when someone said, as they often do after I say I'm a voice actor, oh, what would I have heard you in? And I said, well, most people know me as Revali, the bird character from the newest Legend of Zelda game, Breath of the Wild. Like, I force-fed it to them. And the response I got was, verbatim, and I quote, oh, I had a Nintendo.
reply. I have lots of Nintendo tapes at home.
The only thing that beats it was when I was waiting in front of an Apple store and I was wearing my Mega Man. It was one of those Mega Man since 1986, like one of those t-shirts. And this woman, this very enthusiastic older woman with an iPad comes up to me, points at my shirt and goes, "My son loves Minecraft."
Oh man, now I kind of I wish I'd have known all of this beforehand because we would have just done this entire interview based on roles you've never had. That would have been perfect. Tell us what it was like to be SpongeBob.
It's the funniest thing. It's just proof of how you never actually know what you sound like to other people. Because so many times I've had people say, "Hey, was this you?" And I listen to the advertisement, and it's this guy who's down here, who's just, it's not even remotely close to my voice. And I'm just like, no.
That's not me at all.
I am small babby boy.
You're a small, babby, pure boy.
Oh, I'm also, the last one I'll note, I was, 2 years ago, I auditioned for this thing called Mr. Love, Queen's Choice. And the audition, it looked like it was your simple visual novel dating style game. My wife had once played a couple of those on her phone. And I auditioned for this character named Kiro, who's supposed to be this, charming pop superstar. And at the time, this is exactly what happened with Danganronpa. I was like, oh, this is cute. It'll be like a 1-2 session gig for, a visual style dating sim or a visual novel dating sim. And I managed to book the role. They contacted me 8 months later saying, "Hey, remember when you auditioned for this thing almost a year ago? Well, we're ready to start up and you got booked as this character." And I go in, and now 8 months after that, we're still recording.
Whoa!
I think this is the second most profitable project I have worked on, besides one that I can't talk about yet. And then Breath of the Wild. No, actually, first place I can't talk about yet. Second place is this visual novel dating sim mobile phone game. Third place is Freedom Planet, and then fourth place is Breath of the Wild.
Wow. The fact that one production goes on this long for a game, I don't really hear that being the case too often.
It's not. Even Persona 5, when I was brought on for Persona 5, it was... No, I'll give a better example. When I came back for Reen Schwarzer for Trails of Cold Steel 3, which is another thing I've been voicing in, Trails of Cold Steel 3 came out in September. Please support the official release. Reen Schwarzer, the main character in the game. And I had 4 sessions total, maybe? Two for story, one for miniature side cutscenes, and one for battle efforts and pickups, and that was it.
So when you I know that the Xseed version of those games, those had way more dialogue. So were those sessions were there more of those sessions, or was it comparable when the property moved over to Nisa?
Well, you have to understand, first of all, the only reason why there were more voiced lines in the Xseed version was because somehow, and I don't know the full story behind this, after the original publication of the game, Xseed was able to convince Falcom to let Xseed add more voiced lines in the game. This is something exclusive to the English dub of the game. It's not available in the Japanese. The reason why Reen speaks so infrequently in both versions is, on the Japanese side, Reen's voice actor is way more popular and famous than I am.
Oh.
And so he was way more expensive than I am.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh,
So
interesting.
they couldn't afford to have him voice everything except the major scenes,
right,
or everything outside of the major scenes. And the way the rule of law typically goes for dubs is, if it wasn't voiced in the original, it's not going to be voiced in the localization.
Right.
So I would have more than happily done more recording for Reen Schwarzer, even if it was at a discount or completely out of my pocket. But, I'm not going to officially support that, because please support the industry. And we want to be paid fair rates.
Yes.
But I just had to go with what was available. But your question was, repeat your question again?
Okay, yeah, it was just was the amount of sessions that you had to do for the Xseed version the same as when you had to go do it for Nisa? Because Trails of Cold Steel 3 has significantly fewer voice
It was
lines.
essentially the same.
Okay.
If we're talking purely without including the bonus added stuff that Xseed got to do, it was pretty much exactly the same.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I don't want people to like go on the boards and be like, oh, Reem doesn't talk as often this time because NIS America took over. No, to be perfectly honest, I couldn't tell a difference between if Exceed or NIS America localized it because everything felt exactly the same, and I mean that in the best possible way.
Yeah, like that was a big worry before that game came out. Like me
I'm
being a
telling
big
you
fan.
right now, I tweeted about this, and I'll stand by it.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same localization like editor. It was the same director I had worked with on the first 2 games. They put every painstaking effort in making sure all of the original cast came back unless they literally could not for legal reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people nothing felt different, and that's the best sign I could possibly give you. That's part of why I was able to fall back into voicing Reen so easily, because it didn't seem like I was being taken in a different direction or I was being given different context than I was used to. It was same as the last 2 times, and so it was painless, totally painless.
Yeah, like I recently finished the game myself. It was fantastic. I loved it. And I could not tell a difference in the localization style at all, and that's what I've been trying to tell people that have been going into this one a bit wary. It's just like you literally have nothing to worry about.
I felt like it was the best work I had done so far as Reen, and I don't think that would have been possible if it felt like I'd been starting from square one again.
Yeah, like with a different director or something. I imagine that would have been an entirely But there's a question or two I want to ask about that in a bit.
Okay.
But for now, let's press the rewind button on Mr. Sean Chiplock's life. Look at you, already regressing. You're a child now.
Is it still After 5?
It's still After 5.
Oh, we didn't go back that far. Whatever. What's up?
So
I feel insulted now.
I think that now that our audience is familiar with you, I think that like every voice actor is going to get this question, and I always find it the answer is unique regardless of who it is.
Okay.
As I've spoken to many voice actors in my time.
Okay.
What was your primary motivation into wanting to get into voice acting in the first place?
I don't want to die.
You don't want to die. That's a good reason to do things.
For real. Like, I don't know how long I have on this world, but I see voiceover as kind of like one of the most realistic ways to achieve immortality, because as long as this media exists, even after I'm dead and gone, if you have the ability to play it, whether it's through an emulator or the official release, which you will support for as long as you're able to, I can be there to perform for you and provide part of an adventure for you, and I don't have to be around to do that, Mm-hmm. It was definitely more selfish when I first started. It was, wait, you mean I can take all of this rambunctious energy and shamelessness that I have and get paid for it? I'm in. But it's also like, it's so weird to think about because it was something I was doing before I even knew it was a thing. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about like, there was a period of time where, I watched cartoons and I would play games with my brother and we'd take turns mock dubbing the characters, but I didn't understand that was a thing people did for money. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when it finally clicked for me, when I finally discovered what voiceover was, it just... Even at that point, I didn't tell myself, hey, I've already been doing this. Maybe it's a good fit. It was just, the best way I can describe it is, as a high school kid who was absolutely not interested in any of his subjects, to have something come up that I didn't immediately go, all right, to, was enthralling. It just sunk its hooks into me, and it was the first thing in my life that I cared about more than Neopets and MapleStory. So I decided I was going to stick with it. And to be honest, I'm a little scared because if tomorrow I woke up and I just had no presence whatsoever in voiceover, I don't know if I'd have anything to my name. I probably have a lot more time for streaming between you and me.
But there you go. There's your backup career. We just get you a green screen. We buy you all the video games and you play them for a marveling audience.
I'd have to make my money showing up on podcasts out of desperation for people named...
Checks in the mail, don't worry.
No, but so every day that I get to do this as my career, as my main source of income, I am incredibly grateful. And I try to give back to the community. That's a big part of why anytime a release comes out of something that I voiced in, I'll buy copies of it out of my own pocket and raffle them off. There is a game coming out. I can't talk about it yet, but there is a game coming out that I have I plan on giving so many copies of it away that I actually think, after accounting for taxes, I will have spent my entire earnings from that recording session just on copies of the game that I'm going to be raffling out for free.
Oh my.
That is stunning. Like, it is such a testament that you legitimately enjoy the work that you're doing, just from that answer. I almost teared up from that answer. So good job.
I can't begin to tell you. There have been conventions that I get invited to that I get paid 4 figures to show up at. And it's just, in my head, I'm being paid 4 figures to basically be praised for 3 days straight. My flight's covered, my hotel is covered, there's a green room with snacks, and it weirds me out when when I offer to do like extra stuff or help out with the convention and people are like, "Oh, are you sure? Are you okay with that?" Yes, I am.
Wow.
I'm spending my weekend getting to interact with fans and sign stuff and basically be praised on my work and get paid more than I made that week.
Yeah,
and
you're
ugh.
literally living your best life right now. Like, that's absolutely stunning to me.
I remember a time when I saved like 2 weeks of money from my library paychecks when I was a library page in order to buy my very first console for myself. Now, I walk into because of the industry standard for video games, if I go into a 2-hour bare minimum video game recording session, I can walk out with that check and buy the console plus the game that it's for.
That's, man, like, that's such a huge inspirational answer to such a simple question that you got to forgive me for a moment that I'm just kind of left stunned at the amount of just realness there is.
It sounds like bragging, but I have to what's the word? I have to remind that it's actually what keeps me humble, is because the only reason this career exists is because there's enough people out there who want it or ask for it that the companies go, might be best for our bottom line if we put this in our product.
Yeah.
Because if they figured that they could just sell it without an English dub and make approximately the same amount of money and save themselves that cost, they would do it.
Absolutely.
So,
not to mention the amount of flack that dubs get in the first place, which is kind of, neither here nor there. It's just a bunch of whiny babies.
Noob Saibot, there is no middle ground on my Noob Saibot. People either think he's the best thing that ever happened to the character, or they think my performance is the worst thing that ever happened to the character. And there's some people who say the reason why it's the best thing ever is because it's the worst thing ever.
It's the worst thing ever, yeah. Sometimes
Best of both worlds.
It is a straight divide between this guy is so overly edgy and campy and he's trying so hard to be evil, I love him, versus people going, why the hell did they replace Jameson Price? Like, just bring him back, man. And I don't let it get to me, because at the end of the day, I did what was fun for me. It ended up being what the client wanted. They're the ones who were paying me. And I just made sure to come in and do the best job that I could do based on what I was hired for. And if I can say with 100% certainty that I gave it my best shot, my best effort, and my attention, then there's nothing anyone else can say. I will do my best to learn from critique if I agree with it, but you're not going to make me suddenly feel like, I was a waste just by saying, oh, I didn't like that voice as much.
Yeah.
Become a casting director.
You literally have no reason to feel bad if you went in and did the job you were paid to do and enjoyed that job. Yeah, like that's amazing. So who were your key inspirations then? Were there any voices at all? Or, any voice actors or actresses at all?
From the very beginning, I told people if I could have the vocal range of Kari Walgren, the vocal intensity of Liam O'Brien, and the interactivity and fan friendliness of Steve Bloom, I would never have a day in my life that I didn't work. Kari Walgren especially is a big inspiration for me because she was one of the 3 judges who judged me on my AX Idol 2009 audition that got me into the final round, that won me the competition, that got me on Bang Zoom's radar in the first place. So it's very weird to now have been, I think, at least one project that I've been in where Kari Walgren has also been a voice, to have gone from being a fresh-faced newbie who she was judging to being a colleague alongside her on a project.
That's literally living the dream.
It's always, there's always a new challenge. There's always a new challenge, and I try very, very hard to avoid letting myself coast, because I did once already, and it led to 2 years of just constant non-growth, just depreciation in my skill set. So I use that as a harsh reality check and a reminder that there is always more learning to be done, or there's always more fine-tuning to be done to make sure I stay on top of industry trends. Because the cool rad advertising of the 90s is not the same as, the guy next door of the 2000s, is not the same as, the real guy talking of the 2010s. So who knows what the 2020s are going to offer.
Exactly. Like, you have to keep yourself lean, mean, and ready for the ever-changing future.
Maybe we'll just go full force. Buy the gum. Buy it, or we'll kill you. Buy it.
I bought it. I did.
Congratulations. Your lifespan has been extended for another 90 days.
I get 90 days out of purchasing things?
You gotta drink more Mountain Dew, dude. You need your life verification code.
So, like, what's some early work that before becoming a professional? What are the things that you cut your chops on? Like, where did you get those chops?
There's at least a couple Newgrounds style dating sim games that I'm not going to talk about beyond that.
I know, you came up with a lot of people I know from Newgrounds, like Kira Buckland, D-Mac, people like that from that era. So, like, I'm proud of each and every one of you for coming out, for getting as far as you
And that's where a lot of the early work came, because that's the first place that I posted on, and I still have the forum link to it. That forum thread is still up.
Wow.
The very first place I went to when I decided I wanted to be a voice actor was the Newgrounds BBS, and I posted about how I had finally found my life's calling. And that's now a 10-page thread of people telling me, good luck working minimum wage for Disney and wanting to kill yourself. So what's really funny is I necro posted in that thread 7 years later, and I quote tweeted the guy who said, "Let us know how that works out for you," with like dripping sarcasm, and I went, "Hey guys, sorry to revive this thread, just thought you might want to know I voiced in a flagship game for Nintendo Switch. Follow your dreams."
Damn! But it's like the harshest fucking own I can imagine.
So talking about early projects, a lot of my early experience came from projects that either spawned on Newgrounds or on the voice acting club that was, budding around that time and is still very active today. Yep. In fact, the voice acting club, I believe, is now the biggest, if not the only, cross-compatible amateur/professional voiceover hub that exists on the web in a forum sense.
Yep.
I do know that there's the casting call club. There is also a forum aspect to behind the voice actors. But when we're talking like original projects and both up-and-coming performing artists working with established veterans, the voice acting club has stood the test of time and only continues to grow further. So whether it was claymation, whether it was like the Phoenix Wright parody, sprite animations that were being made, machinima was a really big thing back in that period of time. One of the earliest projects that I worked on that I still remember, it was a 99-cent mobile app for Halloween. It was this Halloween skeleton, and you tapped him and he would giggle, and sometimes he would tell a joke or make a Halloween pun. And that was it.
That was like the first big gig.
My favorite amateur gig I ever did was there was a client on a freelancing site that wanted popular characters making phone charging comments. So like, I guess it was an app where you could like set a reminder. So when your phone was charging or when it was done charging or when it was low on battery, a character would remind you. And it was mostly voice impersonations like Yoda, or Kermit the Frog or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But this client would always insist, they're like, can you do more? Can you do more? And I was like, well, I can do Pokemon noises, like, blah, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So they were like, sure, show us what you can do as a Pokemon. So I started doing like all these Pokemon noise, like Squirtle, Charmander, Bulbasaur, stuff like that. But the client came back and said, those sound great, except we need them to be saying the phrases. The phrases being like, phone charging completed. So I went, okay. So this became like a 30-character gig of me doing,
Charmander, phone is finished charging.
Oh
Or-
my god, that's
Oh
good.
gosh.
That's real good.
Phone is low on battery.
You know, what would Abra sound like?
You need to charge your phone.
But I got paid for them.
That's holy crap.
Abra will never be the same for me
So,
ever again.
you know, to this day, I look back on that as my inspiration. So if you too want to grow up and voice trained PA announcers in Detective Pikachu, make sure you start with offshoot brand Pokemon charging notifications.
The more puns, the better. Holy crap, your phone is charging. You're killing me. You're killing me, Chiplock. You're killing me.
You know what?
After 5, hit him up.
You know what? Somewhere out there is an individual that thought, you know, I really want my Onyx to remind me when my phone's about to die. And now they can have it. That's the magic of voiceover.
It's all thanks to you.
We appreciate your continued work.
Maybe someday, if they want their phone to go Itai Senpai when it's at 2%, maybe they'll find it.
One of these days, we need to get a phone app that will give you head pats when you need to take your mental medication.
I almost guarantee you there's an app that uses like a gyroscope function to like you tilt your phone and it uses the camera to look at the top of your head, and if you touch your phone to your head, it does a head pat while going there.
So
I could do it as Charmander.
was that app like the moment you were like, oh, this is like the real deal now? Like I can do this?
I don't know what became. I'm not one of those people who's like, I got paid. That means I'm a professional.
Well, but I mean, there has to be a point where you realized, wait a minute, I'm actually doing this. And like, was there any specific moment or role that made you think that?
I think it happens in milestones, you know?
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I voiced Diabelle in Sword Art Online, you know, that was a huge deal for a ton of people. It wore off kind of quickly for me because Diabelle only shows up in one episode, and it's a series that's going on for like 3 or 4 different arcs or you know, versions of the franchise. But I can understand why being on a broadcast show on Toonami is a really big step up from being on a Newgrounds animation.
Right.
But part of how I keep myself humble is I try to find something about every role that I can take home with me, whether it was a challenge that I overcame or something I knew I was going to do well with and I excelled, or just a brand new experience something that was my first time doing something. You know, there was a project I worked on within the last couple of years where that was the first time I ever had to vocalize having my throat slit while my organs were hanging out of my stomach. And I actually went so realistic with it that I threw up some of the soup I had right before that session.
Good.
Oh,
Good. They could Foley that in and be some of the blood.
Here's a funny story. The director said, first of all, relax. You are not the first person who has done that while voicing these lines. Secondly, you are the first person who stayed on mic while you did it, so we can actually use that take, and we will.
Oh, wow.
wow.
And we could just Foley in the vomit part as the blood hitting the ground. There you go.
Yep. I legit threw up soup into my hands, and I looked at my scene partner afterwards, and I said, "I'm so sorry," and he was like, "I was just closing my eyes so I could listen to it, so I didn't see anything."
Oh, that's intense. That's intense.
Don't do that for real, kids. Learn your limits.
Yeah, that sounds like a definite, oh, wow, I could really bust up my vocal cords doing that.
Yes, you can.
Got anything for us after 5?
Actually, on that note about vocal cords, I was kind of wondering, do you have to do anything to sort of like maintain, rest? Like, how do you keep your vocal cords in like good shape?
There's all sorts of things you can do. Obviously, warm-ups are incredibly important. I was actually not very good about warming up before I had my brief stint at Disneyland California Adventure as a Turtle Talk employee, because that required you to have vocal warm-ups because you were going to be talking in front of crowds all day. So that taught me, good warm-ups, like vocal raspberries, like stuff that I could do when I'm in the car, whether it's humming along to songs. Probably more important than the warm-up is the aftercare after a vocally intense session. There's the Hulk juice that everyone talks about. It's a product called Ninjam Peipakoa. It's like a Chinese honey loquat throat coat that a lot of people mix into their tea. Usually, the 3-step process to making sure you always recover is don't do more than you know you're capable of. Don't actually cause damage to your vocal cords. Make sure that you stay hydrated and you drink hot teas or ginger teas, something that throat coat, anything that'll help soothe your throat afterwards. And most importantly, when you're done performing, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's
fair,
literally
that
like it's the most important thing, because sound is produced by your vocal cords literally rubbing up against each other, and how roughly they rub up against each other depends on how much air you're passing through your airways, how loud you're being, how projected you're being, how long you're talking for. So if you are trying to recover, logic dictates that the best way to keep your vocal cords from rubbing together even more is to not do things that would make them rub together. So
right. It's the same way, like, if your butt is hurting, right, you don't want to fart, because the sound of a fart is literally the parts of your butthole slapping together.
I have never held in a fart in my entire life.
Good man, right here. Voice actor of the century, right here.
I am just constantly spewing shit. In fact, that's what most of my vocal performances. No,
just spewing shit. Just hey, there you go.
But it is along the same lines. Like, you gotta know when your limit is. I was starting to this is a great life lesson, and then about 2 seconds later I went, there is no way I can follow up to this without making absolute nonsense.
Way to go, Polly.
You led me into a toot trap. How dare you?
The toot trap. The toot traps are deadly on this podcast, Sean. I will warn you. So
the podcast.
There you go. So is there any difference in approach that you personally take when you have to read for more than one character in any specific product or presentation? Or do you kind of approach the many role situation equally, with each character kind of getting the same amount of prep?
There's many more cases where I've had to voice multiple characters in anime versus when I've had to voice multiple characters in the same game. Mm-hmm. In most cases in the game, the characters, they generally won't cast you as multiple characters unless they are vocally distinct from each other. Mm-hmm. A good example being Archangel and his minions from Catherine Fullbody.
Archangel is very much down here. He's very righteous and very holier than thou.
Whereas the minion is all the way up here.
So there's no problem whatsoever about making those different. And that's just as easy looking at them visually as it is listening to the Japanese reference.
Right,
Often the Japanese reference will be distinct. A big challenge I had to do was as Guido Mista and the 6 Bullets for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And that was more of a challenge because, sure, the Japanese reference, there were certain versions of the bullets that sounded much different from the others, but they were all relatively high-pitched, and I wanted to try and make them distinct. So my next step was, okay, well, if step 1, listen to the original reference. If the reference isn't distinct enough, or if there isn't a reference, look at them visually. What do they look like, and how does that affect the voice that's in your head? Excuse me. And for example, bullet number 1 was described as being the leader of the group. He's very bright-eyed. He's got round eyes. He's got a face mask, but he doesn't look aggressive.
Mm-hmm. So I made him similar to a higher pitch Robin from Teen Titans. He's there to support everybody. No aggression whatsoever.
Bullet number 2 kind of looks like his face mask or his markings make him look like he has goggles. So it was
maybe he's more like the cool kid, He's higher pitched, but he sounds cool. He's like the Han Solo of the group,
Mm-hmm. Number 3, he's totally the slanted eye markings. He's always bullying number 5.
So I made him, the most aggressive. He's always gonna beat somebody up.
So it's just a matter of even if they're all high-pitched, mm-hmm. just by finding these little nuances that define their personalities and vocally representing that, you can make them sound like vocally distinct characters in the process. Yeah, so that's how I approach it. I just try to figure out, when in doubt, I always fall back on what do they sound like in my head? Like what do I imagine they sound like? And if the director loves it, great, we go with that. And if not, then I rely on the director to guide me where I need to be. And a lot of workshops will tell you that. They'll say, don't try and guess what you think the client wants, because chances are 99 other people are going to go for that too. Go with what your gut says, because one, you'll have made a super bold choice that may surprise the director, and they'll go, I hadn't considered that, but that really works. Or they'll at least appreciate that you made the choice, ask you to do something different, and now is your chance to show them that you can adapt, that you can do more than one voice, and you can take direction at the same time. Have I been rambling on too long, or can I give you one
absolutely
perfect example
not.
of this?
Like,
No, keep going.
I have people on, like, in an interview capacity because I want to hear their stories. So the more you give us, like, hey, I can sit back and listen all day.
So there was a game that I recorded for, and what I remember the audition side saying was that they wanted, like, it was one of your typical military style games. So like everyone is some different form of like a military hard ass. And I saw there was one that was looking for like kind of like a Swedish, they were like a disco type person. You know, they made a lot of references to disco terms or DJ terms, and they wanted like a Swedish Norwegian accent. So yeah, I went for like the disco person. Let's pop it up, you know, like super camp. Now, turns out that was not at all what they were looking for. They wanted someone hard-boiled who was making DJ references. And originally, the people casting the project were like, oh, this isn't going to work at all for the type of game that we're going for. But the sound director heard it, laughed his ass off, and said, guys, in a game that's so full of super serious people, we've got to have something like this in there.
There's got to be levity in there somewhere.
There's got to be levity. So it was literally a case where it was so far off base of what they were asking for that they went, we gotta do it. And they cast me for the character based on that.
What is that? Is that a project you can tell us about? Or?
I honestly don't know.
Don't remember it?
Don't know.
Okay.
So okay. I'll have to ask permission. Let me look it up and see if it's out. Okay. Hold on.
Okay.
Like, I'm gonna literally type.
We hear you typing. This is good. This is good podcast material. If you could type louder, it would be great.
I can, because it was.
Okay.
Wait. It was released on December 4th, 2018.
All right.
So it's for a project called Command and Conquer Rivals.
Oh, dude, I know what that is. Of course. Okay. I know what Command and Conquer Rivals is.
Yes.
Cool. So
Cha, if you're here like the super disco rave person, that might be me.
And then, like, you just kind of brought that to the role yourself. Just kind of,
yeah. That was purely, this is funny for me to do, and I'm having fun with it, and it ended up getting me cast.
So speaking on choices, then, in roles that you play, whether they're made by the director or they're made by you, and now you can tell me I'm full of shit on this one, but as I was playing Cold Steel 3, I noticed that your Reen performance felt as if you had appropriately aged him up a bit.
That was 100% deliberate.
Okay.
It was actually harder for me to voice younger Reen in the previous games than it was for me to voice older Reen in Trails of Cold Steel 3.
Yeah, because I naturally hear older Reen in your voice already.
Right.
So.
And another part of that is because, you know, Reen has his moments of being super intense, and when I'm at a higher pitch, the higher my starting pitch is, the less range I have to go up in pitch before my voice threatens to crack, especially with like super high pitched voices. So when I was voicing older Reen, it's way easier to do the all out shout because I'm starting from a lower position. My vocal cords are more prepared to handle that. So it was 100% deliberate that I was gonna just add a little bit of baritone, but it was less, I'm gonna add baritone, and more of, haha, I don't have to hide the baritone that would keep creeping in earlier games, especially when I would do the very, you know, close one-on-one heart-to-heart scenes.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of times where I'd be calm, but they'd be like, oh, your baritone's starting to slip in, you're starting to add some of that gravel, take it out. This time it was, all right, we need you to add that gravel.
Give me that good Tom Waits gravel.
There you go. Hold on, I need to scream for 30 minutes before it. That way I can come in sounding like this.
There you go. That's the Reen we all want by like Cold Steel 7, I think.
by Cold Steel 7, he's like, yeah, just don't kill yourselves. Like, go out and destroy the robots.
Be happy, all that crap.
Where's that damn cat? Bibbidi bobbidi boop, can you magic away my lung cancer? Valimar the Ashen Knight. He wasn't ashen to start with. I just keep coughing on him, and all the smoke has discolored his chassis.
You've somehow given Valimar cancer via just normal contact. I don't know how you did it.
He just goes, Valimar, they said I have 3 months left. I don't know how to tell you this, buddy, but I'm dying. And Valimar just goes, acknowledged.
Acknowledge.
Acknowledged.
All
Alright, I had a follow-up question, but let me laugh for a little bit.
We have a good time here.
So maybe I'm just pulling too much from the context. But when you said the difference between younger Reen and older Reen, when you came in to cast Reen for Cold Steel 1, were you directed to be like, oh hey, you should keep this Reen sounding younger because by the third or fourth game.
It was as simple as saying, he's around this age in teenage years. With any recording session, you'll come in and they'll usually play like a vocal reference, either the one that they liked or the one that was closest to what they want, and then they'll have you give a couple lines per level. You'll tweak it until you get into the character voice. And something else that will often happen is you'll get into the character voice and you'll do the first section of lines, but usually by the end of the session, they'll have you go back to the first 10, 20 lines and redo those, because sure, you found the character voice, but it takes a little bit longer before you found the character themselves. And so the end of your session will actually be closer to what they want going forward than the very beginning, and it's not uncommon for them to go back and say, all right, now that you know who he is as a character, let's go back to the beginning of the session and redo these 10 lines.
Okay, interesting.
That's cool,
Okay.
actually, yeah. So, like, when you go into a project, like, let's just continue using Cold Steel for a reference point.
Sure.
Because you've worked with a lot of established series. When you go in for a role like Reen Schwarzer, did you know that, like, this was a part of a very large series with quite a legacy and quite a dedicated fan base going in, or was this something you kind of figured out once you snagged
Yes,
that?
but with reservations. Like, for example, as the story goes, I TV tropes the hell out of Cold Steel 1 before I ever came in to record.
Oh, wow.
So when the director thought they were going to be informing me about the events of Cold Steel 1, I was asking them questions about plot twists in Cold Steel 2.
Oh, wow.
I already knew about, like, the breadth of the game, but at the same time, I am very careful never ever to assume that I am guaranteed to come back, because we see what happens with stuff like the Powerpuff Girls.
Mm-hmm.
We see with stuff that happened with Metal Gear Solid 5. We see stuff that happened where there was that case where one of the Tales of characters from, I think, Tales of Vesperia wasn't able to come back.
Right.
So I am always grateful for each job that I get. And of course, I hope that future things will be localized the same way that I hope, ReZero Season 2 gets dubbed now that it's been announced in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But I never spend money I don't have yet, if that makes sense.
That makes... yeah.
Yep.
In fact, I'm so scatterbrained, I often forget when I'm still due to be paid for projects. I can't begin to tell you the number of times that a check shows up in the mail for a video game session. I went, oh yeah, that's right, I did work on that 2 months ago.
So you get like little presents every now and again because you just, by virtue of forgetting.
It is the best feeling in the world, and then I have no qualms whatsoever about treating myself to a $20 curry dinner.
There you go. You absolutely deserve something like that. Okay. Moving on. After 5, what you got for me? Look at this guy. He didn't even come prepared. Look at this. I get a big time voice actor on my podcast, and this motherfucker comes in. Can't even be prepared.
This is a bit of a callback to the previous discussion about casting for anime versus video games. Would you say that having multiple roles is kind of the biggest separating factor? Like, Is the process for casting for an anime character relatively similar to a video game character?
God, the answer to that is I have no freaking clue, and that's because there's so many different facets that go into it. There are clients that like to cast based on whether the actors look similar to the characters because they want to go for like the idol casting sort of thing.
Oh.
There are cases where people get cast because they go, oh, well, we wanted to cast you as this character, but we already have this other actor who sounds similar to you, so we're going to cast you as this character instead, who sounds way different. There are cases where what are called utility actors get cast because they are able to come in and fill like 5, 6, 7 roles, and it just helps round out the production process. So I'd like to say that there is a difference, but the real answer is I don't think that's the only factor, and I couldn't even begin to list what goes into the casting decisions on any particular project.
So it's just like this completely ominous, weird box that, like Pandora's box, that you can't even begin to open because you have no way of knowing.
There are skill sets in each medium that if you are good at that specific skill set, it will help you in getting cast. For example, if you can give an emotional, contextual nuance to your performance while also matching very specific lip flaps to a fraction of a second, you'll probably do really well in anime. That's not something that's necessarily required in video games, although a close comparison is when there's a time limit, like you can do whatever you want with this line, but it has to be 2.5 seconds or less. But, you know, for example, to give a video game specific example, a lot of video games have character archetypes. There are JRPGs out the wazoo, and Japan loves their character personality archetypes. So if you can figure out, like, oh, this is the brutish sidekick. Oh, this is the timid mage. Oh, this is the guy who has a secret agenda that the party doesn't find out about until 3/4 of the way through the game. If you can nail the sound that those characters end up having over and over and over again, like Yuri Lowenthal manages to do with the Marth types, you'll get cast over and over and over and over again. That's another thing, though. Sometimes you have no control over it. There is a sound that certain character types have. There's a certain sound that Yuri Lowenthal has, that Max Middleman has, that Bryce Papenbrook has, that is just fits so well for the same types of characters over and over and over. Does that mean it's impossible for me to get cast as those characters? No, but it does mean that if their natural sound is already a better fit for the character than what I naturally sound like, that's just another barrier on the hill that I've got to climb up in order to get cast for those roles. And I'm not saying that out of bitterness. I'm just saying it's just yet another facet that may be outside of your control when it comes to the casting process.
That's really helpful, actually. When you consider like the number of up and coming voice actors and actresses, I'm sure that listen to these things, kind of like having that like understanding that side of the process, I think is super important. And I think that not a lot of people go in kind of understanding how important that side of
think of it like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, or Tony Stark as Robert Downey Jr. See, exactly. It's just a Tony Stark instead of the actual actor's name. Like,
it's synonymous. Like they've created. The
question in Hollywood for years has been, who's going to be Iron Man after Robert Downey Jr. is done? Is it even worth doing another Iron Man after Robert Downey Jr. is done? And that kind of stuff happens in voiceover as well.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. So it's that's a huge reason of why you need to continue honing your craft and being able to expand upon what you do, because the more you continue to have to offer, the better the situation is going to be.
Exactly. The first step is to find out what are my strengths, what about my skill set is already marketable, and then you fine tune them to be as perfect as they can be. Then once you're able to make a good amount off of your strengths, then you turn around and go either A, what are my weaknesses, or B, what is something I want to be doing more of that I'm not currently doing more of. And once you've decided, or maybe B is also A, then you start looking into, well, what can I do to make that into a strength, whether it's workshops or listening and copying performances of the character types that you want to play or that you don't get to play as often. So focus first on making your strengths the strongest they can be, and then focus on making your lesser strengths into strengths, so that, and just keep doing this. I visually, it's like a zigzag. You go up, then you look at something that's further down and you bring that up, you go back down, bring that up, and you will continually add to the range of what you're able to do. And the more, like you said, the more you're able to do, the more opportunities you find will come your way.
Fantastic. Like, that's probably the best and most solid advice you could give somebody, other than like you're literally giving us a free clinic on, like the ins and outs of voice acting, from both, being behind the microphone and kind of the meta that you sort of have to think about.
The number one thing I tell people is try not to set goals that have a time limit on them, because part of not being able to know the casting process is you have no real control over when you will be cast as something. The big lesson that I teach is opportunity plus preparation equals success. You don't know when those opportunities are going to come up. So all you can do is spend your time being as prepared as you can be, so that when the opportunity presents itself, you can knock it out of the park and make the most of it.
You can't get any more solid than that kind of advice right there. Like, especially in that kind of industry, like where like your entire trade is based on all of that. I mean, on top of, the voice thing. Right. So are there any roles that you've gone blind into and came out the other side and been like, holy crap, now I'm the world's biggest fan of this?
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I see, that's a big one. That's a big one.
I had seen minor clips of it beforehand, but I hadn't really understood what it was about until I was voicing for it, or I was watching episodes before my recording session to get a feel for the show. And it is so far up my alley. It is so ADHD. It's, let's take this ragtag Mystery Inc. group of attractive men and with amazing fashion sense and give them stupid powers, just the dumbest powers, and make it work. Be like, what would happen if someone who had the ability to control bullets at will met with someone who could just freeze rocks in midair and use them as stepping stones? And now he can just float, because he can just float. And he can attach you to a truck, because why not? All right, let's see what happens.
It surprises me that you were not already into this. Knowing your tastes, that I do, knowing that you weren't already into this is kind of astounding to me.
It is so off the wall, and yet manages to, like... The solutions they come up to for things is so dumb. And I mean that in like the geekiest, best, most exciting way. You legit have no idea how they're going to solve this, and then they do. And then they just move on like, well, that's one problem solved.
like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to me always sounded like, what if Toho except way more macho?
The stuff that would be like the climactic final twist battle in other series is villain of the week in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
It's just, that show, that property entirely is like on 11 all the time.
There's an episode of JoJo that is literally like, here's the current problem. The gang are traveling inside of a turtle, but now everyone is aging to death because of a warm mist that you can counteract with ice cubes, but we're going to manage to overcome this by literally splitting our body into 25 different pieces. That's the episode. That's self-contained.
That's literally the most bizarre thing I think I could have heard about this show, and it really fits.
It is a wonderful duang.
Yes! That's, holy crap. Was not expecting that. Holy crap. Sorry, that explanation now, it's getting to me. I've never seen JoJo myself, so having had that explanation just kind of is fucking with me.
If I had to give an example, I'll Noah Zero is an example of an anime where I was like, this makes no sense. And then 2 minutes later, they would explain it, and I would go, that makes perfect sense. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a case where every 2 minutes I go, this makes no sense. I love it.
Yeah, and that's like entirely my shit, is that like the bigger and dumber something is, the more apt I am to absolutely love it. And yeah, my coworkers ruined JoJo for me entirely. Their fan base that's just like, oh boy, everything's a reference, huh? Oh boy, loving it. That's good stuff. So like on that, like on the note though, like what is a role or roles that maybe you ended up with that ended up being the most interesting or perhaps the most meaningful, like meaning something to you on a very deeply personal level?
I give such a cop-out answer for this because, like I said, part of staying humble is that I find something from every role to take home for me.
Right.
I would say Rivali and Subaru. I know those are big roles, but hear me out. Rivali and Subaru are interesting because they are both incredibly proud roles that also taught me really harsh lessons. Subaru is a role that I am so upset that just no one cares. And it wasn't necessarily because the audience didn't care. A lot of it was like just production politics. It was the DVDs had quality issues. It didn't get picked up for Toonami, so it was a DVD only release. And I don't know if this affected it, but you have to understand that it was a DVD only release or from a company that is known for simuldubs. So their focus is on simuldubs. So it was a series that it was a big deal for me. It was a huge undertaking. I had to do a lot of super vocally stressful stuff. And I don't think really anybody got to experience it because it just kind of pop into existence and then pop out of it just as quickly.
Oh, that's a
so
kick in the nuts.
It was a lesson that just because you had to work super hard for a project is no guarantee that it's going to get the attention that you want it to get. And you just have to deal with that. Like, thank goodness you get paid just for doing the work, not based on how well it does,
Right, yeah.
And it's just a reminder that you have to find enjoyment in the work and not out of hoping that the work becomes a big deal, because stuff like that can happen where Subaru Natsuki was easily one of the most vocally challenging roles I've ever had to do, and it was also probably the least I'm trying to think. It was the biggest role I had that had the worst exposure. So
go out and check out ReZero if you haven't. By all the legal means necessary.
Yes,
and
for sure.
And listen to this man pour his heart and soul into a vessel that is a character.
There is a scene in ReZero. There's two ones that I bring up. There's a scene in ReZero where I am a background voice. I'm not even the focus of the scene. It's a different character. I am in the background losing my fucking mind, screaming bloody murder for 45 seconds straight, culminating in an anguished cry of despair. All right? I did that in one take.
Oh my god! You wouldn't want to do something like that.
I told myself, I said, you can either do this right and totally throw your voice out, and it's going to sound amazing, or you can do this wrong and totally throw your voice out and still have to do it again because you didn't get it right the first time. So the character in that scene has his arms chained up behind him to a wall. So I literally held my arms out behind me to the point of it being uncomfortable and slightly painful. And I let that discomfort feed into my anger and to my yelling. And I did it. And the director goes, all right, well, we're going to do a safety take because we have to. But I'm going to tell you right now, what you just did is what's going to be in there. So have fun.
Wow.
So there was that scene, and then there's another scene where my character is fighting off being possessed, but they didn't have the other actor as the other character voicing his character possessing me. So there is a scene where I am voicing as Subaru and then being taken over as the other character, and I'm voicing as the other character inside Subaru. So I'm imitating this other actor's performance, and then in the same take, I'm switching back to Subaru trying to fight him off.
Wow. That's a lot to kind of try and process. Like, in terms of trying to process that mentally as a performer, as well as executing that, and nailing it.
I am so proud of how I pulled it off, and that's why it hurts so much that the series didn't get a lot of attention. But you know what? That's something I can always refer to. This is what harkens back to the quote I stole from somebody is, nobody goes out setting to build a brick wall, which is very bad phrase timing in this day and age. Instead, he says, I'm going to focus on each independent brick, and I'm going to put it down as perfectly as I can. And I'm going to do this for every single brick that I lay. And over time, the brick wall is going to come into existence, and it's going to be comprised of all these perfectly laid bricks. So whenever I go into a role, I don't think about how much it's going to mean for my career down the line or if it's going to open new doors of opportunity. I just go, I'm going to do this. I'm going to place this brick as neatly as I can, and I'm going to do this every single time that I'm cast.
You're building essentially your own wall of just really cool shit and honed skill, learned ability. Like you're building your own wall and not worrying so much about what it does for you later, because that's already going to sort itself.
Right.
It's just if you focus on the now and break things down. You have that's a really good mindset. Like I work in a studio.
Who knows what it's going to be in 5 years, 10 years from now? When I moved out to California in 2012, do you think I had any idea that in 5 years I was going to be on a release day Nintendo Switch game? Like, I don't think the Wii U existed at that point yet.
And when you get a role like that with somebody like a Nintendo, is there like different from, say, like an anime role or another game role, but like,
to be honest,
there's no difference
Nintendo
at all.
Obviously published it, but the recording was done at Formosa, and Formosa is one of the dubbing studios here in Los Angeles.
Yep.
There's other games that I've done through Formosa, so the actual recording process was really no different. It was exactly the same as Trails of Cold Steel 3. I come in, there's the director, there may be a representative from the company sitting in just to make sure that I am doing what they request for the first couple of sessions. Mm-hmm. There's the sound engineer, we get into the character voice, and then we do the lines. And from there, maybe the only difference is how the script is presented, but outside of that, whether it's a AAA Nintendo game or a smaller indie game, it's pretty much the same.
Wow, that's good to hear. That's good to hear, because I figured, like, with Nintendo being this monolithic presence, you figure that there would be like this extra layer of.
Oh yeah, I was sitting when it was time for the recording session. They actually broke into my house and they black bagged me and took me into their Nintendo mobile. And it was great. I got so many street passes on the way to their HQ. And they took the bag off and they put me in front of the microphone and they showed me like this little counter at the top that had like 3 X's, and they told me that if I went past 2 that I'd be slaughtered on the spot, as is commonplace in this industry. It's very cutthroat, literally. And I'm alive, so I didn't screw up too bad.
You were the best bird that you could be.
I did get 1 X when I farted in the middle of a take, but I'm sure you can understand.
I understand and appreciate those takes. I'm the kind of person that I play fart noises into musicians and voice actors' headphones all the time, just to kind of loosen them up.
I fart into the headphones.
I mean, why not, right? You're marking your territory. That's how I look at it.
I call them warm-ups.
I'm
warming them up.
Warming them up. Just getting them nice and warm. Like, I need them to smell like me. I need to have my musk all over these headphones right now. So we're gonna start winding things down a little bit. Who are some up and coming voice actors and actresses that you would like to give a shout out to? Because
Michael Kovac. Holy shit. The voice of Angel Dust from Has Been Hotel, and I first heard of him from a project called Blush Blush, which is kind of like a male dating sim, progressive idol game. Mm-hmm. Michael Kovac, I hope I'm saying that correctly. If he's not already a big name, he is going to be a must-have actor within the next year. Easily. On the female side, Lizzie Freeman is finally getting the attention she deserves.
Yep.
She can do creature voices very well. She's been building her video game portfolio. She is, I know her most. My favorite is because she voices a character named Lily in Dragalia Lost and Shadowverse, and she said it was the highest pitch she's ever had to hit in her career. Mm-hmm. She's definitely up and coming, if not already established. I want to give one more, something off the wall. Kellen Goff is pretty established, but he's very good. You would not believe the seductive voices that man can produce from his throat. But he voices this Fenrir, like this male wolf character for either Smite or Paladins. And let me tell you, I have never been more attracted to a character he's voiced.
Oh, what? Is this an on-air confession?
He's got like, I can't do it. You have to understand, any attempt I'm about to make is not even 1/10 of what he does for the character.
But he does like this low pitched growly, like. "Rawr."
But it's so hot. It's so attractive. It's so good. But let me see. I got to think of one more up and coming. I'm trying to think of someone actually new rather than someone who's just not getting the attention that they deserve, or even someone who isn't getting the attention they deserve. But all the people I can think of are now finally starting to get the roles that they have been earning for years.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh man. If there's another question, ask it. I'll come back to this one.
All right. I'll tell you what. We will come back to that. Why don't you, like, as a way to kind of close this out, we do a podcast and everybody kind of gets to talk about, like, what they've been doing recently. What do you do other than just voice act? Because obviously that's not the only thing you do. You got any games you're playing or anything that you'd want to talk about?
And this is why I'm so grateful that voice acting's been keeping me busy. The big thing that's been eating up my time is Dragalia Lost. Dragalia
really?
Lost is a mobile game that was produced between Nintendo and Cygames. Mm-hmm. I have far since crossed the threshold of whaledom on it. I've spent about $8,000 on the game so far.
What?
However, this was not something I intended. Alliances started in the game about 4 or 5 months ago, and so I decided to become the leader of my own alliance, which is appropriately named Tryhards.
$8,000 is pretty fucking tryhard, Sean.
I didn't add people based on them being good players. I just added people based on how often I played with them, if they were already part of a group. So we weren't trying to be tryhards. It was a self-mockery. However, we are now one of the top performing alliances in the world for Dragalia Lost.
And it's all thanks to you, of course.
No, I chalk it up to my players, but like...
No, let's be honest, it's all you.
It's to the point where there are now underground discords that only the top level, like, that you have to be vouched for by like 12 other players before they'll add you to it. And it's specifically to be a server for people who want to just clear content without dying over and over again. And at least 5 of my alliance members were instantly invited into that group because they had such a high reputation. So it's weird, man. It's like I'm not trying to flex on everybody. We just happen to be the 4th fastest clearing group in the world for certain trials.
That's starting to sound like some EVE Online shit, the way people are just getting plucked from groups and recruited and shit. Like, that's the kind of shit you hear about in EVE Online with those crazy ass stories. Like, that's ridiculous.
So
big old
that's
phone
the big
game
I'm focusing on, and it's been keeping me from doing. I've really wanted to play Dragon Quest XI. I'm looking forward to Crystal Chronicles early next year. So there is a very big game backlog on me right now, and I feel bad that I haven't been able to make time for Dragon Quest, but at the same time, the exact reason why I work so hard is so that I can play hard. So that if there's a thing on Dragalia that I'm like, I may end up spending $200 to chase this. You know what? I worked hard enough that financially I can afford to do that. So,
yeah, like, it's not irresponsible. You literally are just earning your playtime, and like, and that's a great motivator to keep doing the things that you want to do.
There are people that I would say, "Oh, I spent $400 this month on monthly packs for the game." And they'll go, "Why would you spend $400 on a mobile game?" And I ask myself that, like, am I living within my means? But I also look at it, one, I'm only living one life.
Yeah.
So when I'm dead, that money's worthless.
Live the best one.
2, I want to, if it's something that I am legitimately enjoying and brings me joy, then I will want to financially support it. Mm-hmm. And 3, if I'm that concerned about spending X amount of money on a game, then just work harder to make back the money that you spent on it. Like, that's what it boils down to. The only reason I should feel guilty is if I'm not making sure, if I'm letting it take over my life rather than being my source of relaxation.
That's
it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. As long as I make sure I keep it balanced and I don't let it start defining me instead of just being something I'm very passionate about, that's what's most important.
Yeah, I can say that that's kind of the case even back when you played Spiral Knights. Is that it came, like, when I heard you talk about it, it came from a place of passion. It was never like, it didn't sound like a job to you. Whereas it would become a job to me because that wouldn't be what I'm passionate about. But
Right.
yeah, like it's definitely like, oh, like you're doing what you want to do and you're
Right.
supporting it exactly the way. Yeah, like that's incredible. That's
And finally, the last two talents I want to say for up and coming, Kiba Walker. He's a guy who I've worked alongside with him on a bunch of projects, and he's finally starting to make his break into anime. And Brandon Winkler, who is starting to book a lot of lead roles in anime.
ooh,
And
nice.
Yeah, so Kiba Walker and Brandon Winkler, both of them are very passionate people. They grew up on anime like I did, and they're getting recognition that they've earned. So yeah.
Yeah. We have one listener question. Can you believe that? One. I'm disappointed.
Was that the
everything.
question? Can you believe that?
Yes, that was the question. It was just, can you believe that? I'm like, what do I do with this? No, the question, it comes from our good pal Lironette, and he wanted me to ask you, is there any tips for learning an accent?
For learning an accent. Oh man. Well, like any good writer will tell you to read if you want to write. You have to listen if you're going to practice.
Mhm.
You know, part of a big reason why I'm able to do any sort of believable British accent is because my father, rightfully and logically, grew me up on Monty Python.
That's
So,
good.
of course, you know, I got to hear all the Cockney accents from people who are being silly. And, of course, you know, the more regal, very prestigious King dialect of British accents.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's, you know, you look up tutorials on YouTube from reputable sources. I remember that I almost want to say you should go bug Edward Bosco, because I remember him talking about an accent/dialect book that would write out how certain words would look like if you wrote them out instead of just saying them. One of the most common example is if you say rise up lights, you're already saying razor blades in Australian. Rise
oh,
up
wow.
lights.
Oh, wow. That's actually
right?
good. That's good.
Okay, clever.
So that stuff like that, like just find different ways to either put it in a format you can read or in a format you can listen to and repeat. Mimicry is a huge part of learning. Just learn from reputable sources, and you have to put the time into it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have to be willing to sound dumb before you can sound good.
Yeah. That's the part that I could never get over. It's like, I don't want to sound dumb. I'm far too intelligent. Like, I can't do that. I can't dumb myself down. What are you talking about?
The other thing I will say is the reason why you should spend a crap ton of time practicing. You should not audition for an accent unless you can convince the client you are a native for that accent. I am not. I will. You know, I can do an Indian accent, but generally I'll only do it if they're asking for like a cartoony, like campy type of Indian accent.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to do something like an Irish accent unless I am certain I can make it sound like an actual Irish person, especially in an industry where more and more they are looking for actual diverse casting, because now more actors of authentic ethnicities are jumping into the fray, and good for them.
And that's
I'm
good.
totally
That's
supportive of that.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, the more native speakers and the more people of color we get into this kind of profession, I think that just the entire spectrum just opens up and starts sounding even more dynamic and fantastic.
That is another thing I will add. I just want to make a very careful distinction. Impersonating an accent is worlds different from impersonating an ethnicity. Okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Do not, if you are not an African American talent, do not audition for a role that is asking for an African American talent or sound, even if you can sound authentically urban or African American or whatever the client is putting in the specs.
Yeah.
It's a whole can of worms I don't want to get into, but the fact of it is there is exclusivity happening in this industry that shouldn't be happening. There's no reason for it to happen, but there is exclusivity happening that is taking or preventing people of color or people of certain backgrounds from being able to get jobs. And so there is no reason to make it harder if you do not represent that culture, but you are trying out for roles that should be represented by that culture. So please, it's okay to pretend you're British. It's okay to pretend you're Irish. It's okay to pretend you're Russian. Do not pretend you are Chinese or I'm gonna stop because
Yeah,
I'm white.
yeah,
and I don't know what I'm talking about.
You can get yourself in trouble. I understand that, but the sentiment, I believe, gets across very well, and you know, I don't think that anybody's going to misinterpret anything said there. Like
You can pretend to have a dialect that you don't.
Yes.
Don't pretend to be a person that you're not.
There you go. There you go. And before we do the final, you know, plugs and stuff, After5, do you have anything that you'd like to ask before we start rolling on out of here?
I did have one thing lingering on my mind when you mentioned the whole 45 seconds of blood curdling and the uncomfortable position with the arms behind your back. Do you often like kind of like emote to help kind of emphasize your lines?
I'm very much a method actor. You know, there was a time when I was playing a very bookwormy, like I think I'm smarter than everyone else in the room kind of person, and I actually brought in. I wouldn't recommend doing this. I just happened to have it with me. I had a copy of Hyrule Historia, so I opened it and held it in my palm like Robin from Fire Emblem.
Oh, that's awesome.
I will, you know, if I'm playing, you know, a cool character who's always laid back, you know, I'll often end up having my hand running through my hair like I'm slicking it back. So that's just how I am as an actor. It's not a secret to good acting, but whatever helps you get into the headspace, embrace it, as long as it's not preventing you from being able to give a clean recording in the microphone.
Speaking of method acting, any aspirations for live action, or do you think that you're perfectly fine doing voice acting?
If I can do it, I'm willing to pursue it.
Fantastic. Let's go. Get your headshots out there. Let's go.
It really boils down to have your preferences, but be open to learning.
Yeah.
Like, you never, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's been, like, the steady theme throughout this entire podcast so far is that, exactly, yeah. You've summed it up, and I didn't even have to. You want to take over a podcast? I know one that could probably use a new host.
Thanks, but I have standards.
Oh, wow. I have never been so epically burned on my own podcast before.
No.
I really
I was trying to think of how to wittily save that, and I was like, nope, that just sounded mean.
It's okay. I'm way meaner.
No, this was actually legit. This is one of the more fun podcasts that I've had. Like, there was a lot of unique questions, so thank you.
Yeah, we wanted to just freewheel it. We wanted to just have fun with it as if you were just a guest on the podcast normally. Like, I don't want to go...
I missed you, okay?
I missed you, too!
I miss you.
Yeah, like, we lost contact when I changed Twitter accounts a few years ago, and it was just like, wait a minute, I know that guy. Why isn't he on my list? And then Mac reaches out and is like, hey, do you want to talk to the voice actor for Reen? And I was like, I know him already! Yeah, it's good.
People just have to remember, I have a career that until like 20 years ago wasn't even that public. It just happened to become a public interest. And it happens to be more public facing than a lot of other careers, like the guy who keeps my lights running or the guy who makes sure my internet is always functioning. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't make me more important than anybody else, you know?
Except
I'm still a human being, you know? You can talk to me.
Yeah. I think that, like, the internet has really opened that world of voice actors to their audience a lot more. Like, given the fact that social media is such a big thing, like, it can be good or bad, but I see that, like, you know, like, there are so many voice actors out there now that are very willing to interact and talk with their fans or be on their dumb podcasts for no reason, things like that. And it's something that I think makes, like, when you grow up interested in those fandoms, it's something that, like, we didn't have, like, when I was growing up. So having that kind of access now and seeing the kind of communities that can be built around various fandoms and voice actors and actresses, it's a really, really cool thing.
It is. And it's often some of the only time I get to be able to interact with those communities because otherwise I'm busy. So, you know, people are like, oh man, conventions it's so much work. And to me, it's like, no, convention visits are my vacations because I get to, like, talk about the things that I'm in for 3 days.
Yeah, like, that's, yeah, like, you're again, like, you are living your best life now, and I couldn't be any happier for you. Is there anything that you want to plug on our way out of here? Anything upcoming that you were in that you would like people to go check out? Like, just spill it all.
All of the major updates happen on my Twitter. Follow my Twitter at Sonic Mega. That's where, if I'm allowed to talk about something, that's the first place it gets announced. Mm-hmm. If I'm holding a raffle, that's where the raffles get held. It used to be, I also have a Facebook, but I literally deleted that because I got sick of what it was becoming.
Yeah,
so
Facebook is garbage.
Twitter is the place. Twitter is the place right now. if you want to see me at a convention, I remind people all the time, because a lot of people forget, the best way to get your favorite actor at a convention is to ask the convention to invite them. So either reach out to the convention staff directly, their contact page, and tell them I would like to see so-and-so, or my convention agent is Conventions Etc. If you contact them and say, is there any chance you could get so-and-so to come to this convention, often they can also reach out and say, we've received inquiries of interest. We'd like to know if you'd like to draft up a contract. You know, this week, this Thursday, I'll be flying out for DaishoCon. And that's because people went to Daisho and said, we would love to have Sean here. And Daisho went, hey, let's talk. So
It's as simple as that, really. Like, it's not a difficult process to get in touch with voice actors and actresses if you're looking for them on the convention circuit. So, yeah, I've got friends that work the convention circuit. I got people. They could put people like you into the ground. Okay? But Sean, I really want to thank you for taking your time, giving us an hour and a half of your time when I never intended to take this much of your time, but I'm so glad that you spent it with us.
Just like video game sessions, when you're having fun, the time just flies by.
Yeah.
Like, you totally.
Yeah, and I know that, like, this is going to go out. A lot of people are going to dig what you've had to say, because I know that, like, kind of like canvassing what people want to hear me do interviews for. Voice actors are a big thing.
Else after listening to this podcast, I want you to go and look up a video of my performance as Noob Saibot, and I want you to decide, which side are you on? Do you want me to die, or do you want me to live forever? Let me know.
Let us know in the comments. I'll be posting this on YouTube as well.
Hashtag best performance ever. Hashtag worst performance ever. I don't care which it is. Let me know. Let it all out.
As long as you feel better at the end of this, that's what matters.
I will make, for my 30th birthday next year, I will custom order a cake that's either like a white chocolate cake for best performance, or if worst performance is the highest one, I will get a black licorice cake.
All right. Well, we've already got one hashtag best performance ever in chat from our good pal John Thayer. So that's one. That's one in the good column. That's one in the good column. Sean,
so you guys decide. Will I get like a delicious cheesecake, or will I taste like 2-year expired Twizzlers?
Oh God.
Ooh.
Oh. It is like the just absolute turd of cakes.
Imagine if you had to suck cake frosting through a Twizzler.
So if you get the best,
I will leave you with that thought.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Again, thank you, Sean, for appearing. And After5, thanks for taking co-hosting duties. It's been a pleasure having everybody here. Remember, we are the podcast that loves you. We are the only ones that love you.
Thank you very much for your time. This was a very fun experience.
Cool. I'm going to press the stop streaming button now.